But I want to catch up with Liberal MP for Hughes, Craig Kelly, who joins us again in Sydney. Thanks for joining us, Craig. Your Prime Minister was down at Snowy Hydro 2.0 today, spruiking that as a jobs-creating initiative. Is it a waste of money, spending upwards of $10 billion for no net addition to our electricity generation?
Well, Chris, you are right. It actually it's a destroyer of energy, not a creator of energy. It stores energy when you pump the water up the hill, and then when you release the water, so you actually lose, I think, about 30, 40 or 50% of the energy that you actually use in the system. Look, time will tell. I've had some, question marks about this over the years. The Snowy board are very, sort of bolshy about it. They think it's going to work. We'll just have to see.
So you're saying that your Prime Minister was down in a by-election spruiking a white elephant today?
Well, Chris, time is going to tell on this project. The only way it makes economic sense is if you can buy the electricity for virtually nothing in the middle of the night, and that will probably be coal-fired power. So when you actually want to charge, you say the Snowy 2.0, when you actually sort of charge it up, that's to pump the water up the hill. That energy will come by increasing the, ramping up your coal-fire power stations, and then you'll buy that electricity probably at a very low price, and then you'll release it at very peak time. So there's an arbitrage between the pricing that they can get, and I think Snowy Hydro that are pushing this program believes that arbitrage will be big enough to offset the cost of the project.
So is it a Malcolm Turnbull hangover that Scott Morrison's been stuck with, too late to get out of?
Look, it's look, there is an economic case for this, but I'm yet to be convinced of the full economic case. I think it's several $1 billion worth of expenditure. I think it's already blown out to double of what it is. You also have to remember there's also the costs, about another $2 billion costs on top of what Snowy Hydro are going to spend themselves on the transmission line upgrade that's needed. Otherwise, the electricity can't be used because the current transmission lines are at their full capacity from Snowy Hydro. So another $2 billion at least, and probably more as we can't go on, that will be needed in the transmission lines to get the power out.
It's not the ringing political endorsement you'd expect from your own team in the lead up to a by-election on Saturday.
Look, well, Chris, you've got to call it as you see it. This will be a very tough by-election for the coalition. Remembering, no government has won a by-election in 100 years. So we go into this by-election as very big underdogs. We've got a great candidate down there. She's been doing an enormous job barnstorming around the electorate campaigning, and I think it's going to be a little bit tighter than many people think.
I know you keep an eye on what goes on in the US and some of the Trump derangement syndrome and the rest of it. I want to just show you a grab from the Australian reporter Amelia Brace, who got caught up in those protests outside of the White House. She and her cameraman got roughed up, as you remember. Here she was speaking to a congressional investigation today.
As I began reporting live, the line of police suddenly and without warning began charging forward at a sprinting pace, knocking protesters to the ground. A park police officer who was passing us stopped, turned towards Tim and rammed him in the chest and stomach with the edge of his riot shield, causing Tim to keel over and drop down. The officer then took a step back, paused, then punched his hand directly into the front of Tim's camera, grabbing the lens. As this happened, Tim and I were both repeatedly shouting the word media.
And went on to talk about all sorts of roughing up and overreaction by police. I don't think he keeled over. I think he's still with us. But what's your response to the media claims about this and directing it straight back to the White House?
I remember actually seeing that video, and the cameraman was sort of, I don't think he was hiding, but he was actually positioned behind a post. And I think the police officer that came past, in those situations, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of commotion. It's difficult to know who is who, and I think he was actually taken by surprise seeing someone behind the post there. Look, it's a very difficult situation in the US. emotions are very much inflamed, and when media position themselves right in the middle of a fracas like that, those type of things are likely to happen.
Craig Kelly, thanks for joining us again.
Thanks, Chris.